Andy Kennedy, who organized this permaculture panel for us tonight, is one of my favorite people. So Andy Kennedy is a co-founder of Shambhala Collective and Permaculture Education Center here in Houston, was corrected, where they broke ground in June of 2022 to establish an off-grid land-sharing community and a living through nature experience and resource for interns, visitors, and the region. Andy is an herbalist and health coach focusing on plants for healing, nutrition, and mental health. Andy was introduced to permaculture and herbalism in 1995 during an internship at a community-style education center in Oregon. She carried these practices forward into a career with sustainability nonprofit in Colorado, managing programs in the areas of zero waste, green building, regenerative gardens, reforestation, and energy efficiency. In 2015, she joined the CSU Master Gardener program and focused on education around herbs and aeroponics. And in 2020, when the world shifted, she set her sights on establishing Shambhala here with us in our community. And she's brought her friends from Knoxville, which she's going to introduce.
So, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Devin. First on our panel is Kerry Brown. Highly recommend getting on Kerry's mailing list. Kerry Brown runs Strong Root Resources, consulting and education business centered around teaching and concepts of personal resilience, regenerative methods of food production, as well as land study, wild and medicinal food foraging, and other traditional skills. He also runs Bluebird Hill Homestead near Knoxville, Tennessee, where he's the fourth generation to work on and renew this land. He live streams YouTube every Friday at 6:30 Eastern, holds regular foraging classes as well as quarterly gatherings for folks interested in homesteading, regenerative approaches, and personal resilience. And I highly recommend, like I said, getting on his website and getting on the mailing list, because we've been down there a couple times. What he does is amazing. He's been up to Shambhala. When I thought of doing this panel, he was top of the list. Second, Benjamin Steltenkamp. I can't speak highly enough of. He single-handedly may have gotten us here. That's a long story, but just kind people doing kind things helps people transition. This is one of the softest landings I've had. I moved a lot in my life, and thanks to Ben, we had a nice soft landing here. So he's been passionate about food growing and sustainability for the past 15 years. Currently the farm manager at Empower School at Valley Dream Farm in Knoxville, a regenerative Christian agriculture school. He admins the Knoxville Regenerative Co-op, and also the East Tennessee Regenerative Network. Both are on Facebook for those of you who do still social network. And then last but not least, new to me, but highly recommended from a dear friend that we share, Ajit has been living and visiting permaculture farms and studying natural building for the last 7 years, having just completed her PDC design certificate at the Rancho Mezquital in Costa Rica, a natural building and education center flourishing for the past 25 years. She's also a mom, an artist, and a yogi.
Is this going to stay on? Or
Do you need me to slide?
Yeah, that would be helpful, actually. Thank you. And I think I'm good. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Mic test. Kerry, how loud can you talk?
This is about as loud as I can talk.
Can you hear Kerry? Okay. Ajit, mic test.
Hi, everybody. My name is
Benjamin.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, very good. All right, so the first thing I kind of wanted to just do was to pull up like this basic, super basic comparison. Permaculture to me is a very holistic system. I fell in love with it because it felt like homeopathy to me, and I was already studying herbalism and homeopathy, and it's taking the whole system into account versus segregation and isolation. And sometimes in a market garden that is required, right? But permaculture is such a bigger picture than that, and I think some of you are probably even doing permaculture practices that you don't know about. So we'll unpack that a little bit tonight, and I've got some questions for the panel, and Pam and the girls with AHA sent me some questions to ask them as well. But first I wanted to just kind of unpack permaculture, and the word is a conjunction, permanent agriculture. So it takes two concepts of sustainability and longevity and holistic with agriculture. The word was invented by a pair of botanists, ecologists, who were observing nature
and that nature can kind of do its own thing without our interference, right? And the less we interfere, the better. And so I think I would actually even call upon you guys to throw something else into that if I've missed something, because there's so much to unpack. This is really just a window into the world of permaculture. But anything to add to what I've said about like what might summarize permaculture to you guys?
One of the things
Go
I've
ahead,
heard about permaculture is that it's ancient indigenous wisdom brought forward through people who farm and are close to the land. So it's not anything new per se, but the way that we inhabit it as an agricultural system was developed by two European white guys who basically looked at indigenous wisdom from all cultures and termed that word permaculture so that it could be easily digestible and sort of brought into different categories.
In the 70s, I don't think I said that.
Yes, in the 70s, so it's
70s.
fairly,
Yeah.
right? So your grandparents, it's their wisdom.
Yeah, and one of the overarching themes or systems is setting your farm up in a zone system. So the zone 1 is your house, or zone 0, excuse me, is your house, and you want all the things you're going to touch daily in that zone. And then it goes out to zone 5, which is things that you might only touch once a year, twice a year. And then, next slide for me. We've also got, whoops, I skipped a slide, I think. No. It didn't, that's weird. Go back. No, sorry. There was supposed to be one with all 12 principles. Maybe it was, there we go. Okay. Well, maybe it was before that one. Yeah, so you can't quite see them. In fact, I'll just come up here and read them. Observe and interact, catch and store energy, obtain and yield, apply self-regulation, and accept feedback. Use and value renewable resources, produce no waste, design from patterns and details, integrate rather than segregate, use small and slow solutions, use and value diversity, use edges and value the marginal, and creatively use and respond to change. So, I mean, for me, it's a very Buddhist practice of like, just observe what the land is already telling you and do as little as possible. For us, I just wanted to interject with a story. When we bought the land, it had been cattle grazed for 7 years and then tobacco farmed, like probably most of your properties have been, for 25 or 50 years before that. There were no bees, no birds, and no butterflies. It was completely mowed. And we spent the first year observing while we built our house and the road. And slowly but surely the bees and the birds and the butterflies came back. And when we saw our first goldfinch flock fly in, we had just moved on site. The flock came right after us in June of the next year. And we all were just sitting in chairs watching, and that's what Mollison says to do. Just sit in your chair. It's your best tool in the garden. Sit in your chair and watch what nature's already telling you to do. So without keeping droning on and on, I really want you guys to hear from this panel. So why don't you guys tell us how you got started and why this method appeals to you? Benjamin, you want to start?
Sure. I started homesteading first, and like a lot of you, I'd be in my backyard and I'd experiment. And I'd be, I'm gonna try this and see if this works. And and I had a ton of failures. I was really good at that. I was really good at failing. So
who's good at failing?
yeah.
Fail forward, right?
Yeah. So this was in north central Florida. So I had sand, and I learned to garden in sand. And sand has very unique properties. The best thing about it is it's very easy to shovel. Out of here, that's not true. It's not easy to shovel anything here. So I figured out real fast that there were people smarter than me out there. And one of them was Bill Mollison, and he was one of the founders of permaculture. So I thought someone had to have done all these experiments and figured out what worked and wrote it down. And that's when I started going online and looking at YouTube videos and podcasts. I found a wonderful podcast, some of you might listen to it, the Survival Podcast. And Jack Spirko was on there talking about permaculture and homesteading. And permaculture is an ethic-based design science. And he explained that, the first ethic is earth care. And you can't design any systems that damage the earth. That made sense to me, duh, right? And then the second one was people care. You can't design systems that harm people. Well, we all know there's lots of systems that harm people all the time. So this was a big change for me. And then the third ethic is a little different, but it's basically the return of the surplus, right? So that was good. And then I found out, well, there's a track that you go on. If you're really into this, you listen to podcasts, you watch YouTube videos, and then you find a permaculture design course, which is like a 72-hour course. And I found one, and I took it, and I thought I was going to know all this stuff after 72 hours. And when I got my diploma, I realized I had just graduated kindergarten. Did I know a lot more than I started? Absolutely I did. So I knew where my passion was, and that was in social permaculture, community-based permaculture. So my goal, as soon as I was to get back to where I lived, was to start a local group, a lot like what you guys have here. And that's what I've been doing. Every place I've been living, I've started a permaculture guild, and I've gotten people educated. I've set up skill shares and all sorts of stuff. So that's basically how I got into permaculture, and it's led me into a profession of being a farm manager on a regenerative, faith-based school. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Ben.
Kerry? All right, so like Andy mentioned, I'm the fourth generation on my family's farm, so my heritage is incredibly important to me. My great-grandfather, who purchased the property that I live on now, he actually grew up in Greene County, so that is the absolute basis of all my decisions. Is I feel a deep responsibility to honor the land and therefore honor the people who made the sacrifices to get that land back in when the country was going through a very difficult time during the Great Depression. So what really, I never really went down the conventional road. I've always kind of been an outlier and a weirdo. When I was growing up on the farm, Weirdos Unite, and Introverts Unite somewhere else. So I was most happy growing up finding a tree to read a book in, usually something like My Side of the Mountain, watching the birds, watching the critters. So I was always actively engaged in the landscape. But like we do, grew up, went to school, did a little bit of college, started a career as an EMT in Knoxville, and my wife and I, when I was around 23 years old, got a house in the city. I was already tired of apartment living, and I said, I just want a little house with just a little yard. We ended up literally with a 950 square foot house on a 1/5 acre lot. And my hobby, when I was not at work, was to develop it into a foodscape. And kind of the way Ben mentioned, I kind of revisited these regenerative techniques through the Survival Podcast and all kinds of other content creators. The urban homesteading movement was becoming really big. There were a lot of books out on that topic, and so I kind of combined my nature nerdiness with kind of my DIY ethics and permaculture and ecologically appropriate techniques into developing out that property over about 14 years. And then when we moved back to the family farm in 2020, I just took those same things and I just kind of scaled them appropriately for a larger area. So it's just, it's pretty much all I really think about and care about. And I did want to point out real quick, these permaculture principles, you can apply this to anything in your life, not just your garden or your landscape. You can use it to run your business. You can use it to handle, the way you manage your family or anything like that. So really think about those things. It'll unlock a lot of stuff for you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Kerry.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump off on that, and please go and visit Kerry at his farm, because it's just amazing. You'll never see a prettier composting pile. You'll never use a more delightful composting toilet out in the yard. It's gorgeous. So my name is Ajit. It's a taken name. I was born Lori Jean. I was born in New Jersey. I got into all of this because my mom insisted on growing peppermint. And I just sat all day in my little backyard in New Jersey looking at that peppermint and just waiting for it to bloom so I could, we could make peppermint tea. So I'm a little bit different in that I moved to the burbs, got married, moved to Tennessee, moved to the suburbs, and then quickly got bored. And so I started to turn my yard into, not so much a food forest, but if yoga students couldn't pay, I'd be like, well, that's okay, just come out in the backyard and grow something for. So I learned, that's how Sarah Bush and I met. She regrew peas. And I taught her yoga and we grew peas together. And so we're still friends, and I think we probably would grow peas together again. So then, fast forward, I got divorced, my son graduated college, and again I got bored, so I sold all of my possessions. And I went on a travel trip for the next 7 years, of which this is the 8th year. And I've traveled around the world, to Africa, to Costa Rica, to Hawaii, and also around here, around North Carolina, Tennessee, Oregon, Washington State. During the pandemic, oh no, I did not stay home. No, I drove to North Dakota and South Dakota, and I lived along the Mississippi River and worked at a hemp farm. And so I did all the things in your 60s that you're supposed to do in your 20s. But I'm a weirdo, so and so I just finished a straw bale building workshop in Arizona, and my friend said you got to go down to Mazatlán in Costa Rica, and you got to get your, they're doing a PDC, and that was the cherry on the cake for me. So I have been these permaculture principles, like Kerry said. I'm an earth builder, but also I'm a cultural explorer. I'm Lebanese and Italian and Irish, and so like strong roots. Like I think that we got to work together and we have to learn from each other. There's a lot of information that you have that I do not have, and then there might be information that I have that you can use. And so I think part of why I'm here and why I said yes is because part of the success of the farms that I've lived on and worked on is people care and listening and communication and being able to make mistakes and say when you're wrong and step back and really have a combo and really have some some integration. So anyway, that's what I hope I can contribute, as much as telling you how much I love growing plants and herbs and all that.
That's something we definitely all have in common, is loving plants, and loving dirt and loving the food that those two things make. And I think the biggest takeaway for me when we start talking about permaculture on a deep level is the community piece, which proudly we already have here in this group and the what group. And because it is a big, Ben spoke to it. The biggest piece is taking care of humans. And like Kerry said, you can apply all of that even to parenting. I think it's such a great, I feel like what Mollison and Holmgren did was they just observed not only indigenous, but they just observed nature, they observed community, and they said, how can we kind of put this all in one sweet package and teach people to just be a little bit more intentional? I have seen, I don't think I can think of an example of a permaculture learning center that isn't an intentional community, because those two things go together. So when we decided to pull the trigger, sell the lottery ticket in Colorado that we've been sitting on for 12 years, and buy a piece of land, we looked for land that had water. That ruled out everything west of the Mississippi, because we weren't going to have water in Colorado. We weren't going to get rights to the water, and in 20 years we probably weren't going to have very much water. And then, where else, why else we chose this area? The biggest piece was there were already people doing what we wanted to do. Well, I told you how I found Ben, on Facebook, and we said, okay, well, it's between Knoxville and Chattanooga at that point. We'd already had all these factors in of where we wanted to go. We wanted mountains, we wanted seasons, etc., right? You have your reasons you came here too. And for us, the diversity in the land, the zone being so much of a longer growing season than we had in Colorado, I felt like I wasn't going to have to fight my land to grow on it, fight the seasons to grow on it. If you think our soil here is tough, move to Colorado. I like, anytime someone complains about the soil here, I'm like, at least it's got color. Like, we just have rocks, you know, it's not called the Rocky Mountains for nothing, right? So yeah, like try digging in that. We had raised beds because we could not dig in our soil. And we didn't create a food forest either. We planted a couple of fruit trees. We had a beautiful grafted apple tree. It was hard for me to leave because it produced a lot of apples, and start from scratch because the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, you know. But I really think that the more we talk about these practices and the more that we incorporate listening to our land, the better the results come. And it could just be one or two takeaways that you guys take tonight, because I do feel like we're already talking about a lot of these practices, but I think I do want to talk about achievements, and then we can kind of nitpick in and get a little deeper on the minutia. But for you, Ben, what do you feel like was the biggest permaculture success? Like, what was the one thing that you can look back on now and all your experimenting, both in Florida and here in Tennessee, that you can go, you know, that's the one thing that I feel really good about?
Finding where my niche was right away, and that's part of a PDC, is where in the diagram you are. You know, you mentioned that natural builder, you know, and I like to build stuff, but I'm not a natural builder. I'm getting more and more skills as time goes by. But
on Shambhala.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I volunteered to help at Shambhala build the yurts and the frames and stuff. So, and that was to increase my skills and to build community. I mean, that was a big part of it. But finding out that I was like a natural marketer or a natural promoter, and I figured, well, if anything needs promotion, it's permaculture, because it's one of the few things that I feel is the answer to most of our problems in the world. And it starts with food, and real food, not processed garbage food that, you know, I ate on the way over here. So chips are good, you know. Finding where my niche was very early, and focusing on community. And I mean, I'm going to repeat that a lot because it's very important, because I found out very early I was only capable of so much. I only knew so much. I could only study so much. My wife could only put up with me so much. So I had to get a group of people that were nerdy just like me, passionate about homesteading. Really was how we started, and then, you know, we got more and more people into regenerative design, which is just another way of saying permaculture. And I think that's probably my biggest win, was finding that out fast. Find out what you're good at.
Right, because you can't do everything. How many people are trying to do everything on your homestead? And how exhausted are you? Yeah, and I think collaboration is really important. Some people, one of our neighbors up in the we're in the Pumpkin Valley kind of area, and he has 300 blueberry trees. 150. He and his buddy split a 300 order, and so he has 150 blueberry trees. For $8 a gallon, I can go over and pick blueberries. We're not going to have that many blueberries on Shambhala for 10 years. And like, to be able to just go to his house and glean information every time I go, and now I know how much 3 gallons lasted me. I know how much to pick next year, you know? And I get that many more visits with him learning about blueberries, because he is like king of blueberries to me right now, you know? And Ben taught me about moringa. He pretty much single-handedly populated Shambhala with comfrey, because I brought it from Colorado and it didn't like it here because it had its own ecosystem, and that didn't match ours here, and so it didn't make it. And he gave us like 50 root sections, and we put it in every tree we planted. So there's comfrey with every tree, and that's like 70 trees that we've planted so far. They haven't all made it, but
yeah, comfrey is it's a plant that has been around for obviously a very long time. The Europeans grew it. They call it knit bone or bone.
Native Americans call it knit bone.
Yeah, so it is one of these plants that if I tell you all the things it does, you're going to call me a liar. But it is a fantastic plant. It will grow very well. It grows very well here. It's perennial, and it spreads by rhizome for the most part. So all you do is plant it and then harvest the leaves. You can use it for a chop and drop. You can make a tea out of it. You can use it for livestock feed. You can sell the root. The root goes for, is it like $1? Kerry?
About $1 a cutting.
Yeah, $1 a cutting of a root, and I mean, yeah, exactly, yeah. So, and that was actually one of the things that I would give away at the meetups, because I knew how valuable of a plant it was, and I wanted to be like a market disruptor, because I knew how popular it was, and I would just give it away for free. So, yeah, no, and there's so many, like, if you look online for permaculture plants, it's in that top 10. It just does so well.
Yeah, and if you sprain an ankle, you can wrap it, the leaves are this big, you can wrap your ankle with the leaves.
Do you have your sample there?
If you break a bone, it actually heals
will.
bone.
It actually heals the bone, yeah. Cuts and scrapes are like probably the #1 thing I would always recommend. Andy has, I still have, you gave me a big thing of it, like 3 years ago. I still have it, because you don't use that much of it
No, it's 3 ounces.
until you have your wounds, and then you rub it on, and
It lasts forever.
Yeah, it lasts very long.
I'm curious how many people here grow concrete?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we have
but
a
I
few.
have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
All right, Kerry, achievement?
It's definitely the community that I've built, friendships that I've made. That's the most satisfying part. When I started Strong Roots officially in 2019, but didn't really get it underway until the summer of 2020, I just started finding the events. Ben and I found each other right around that time, I'd say. And just, at this point, it's maybe even thousands of people. Now, I've certainly interacted with hundreds face to face, and probably into the thousands, but the events I've been able to attend, table at, present at, so forth, that's been the best part. And on a more personal note, like on my own farm, growing this flock of Katahdin hair sheep into my 4th season now, we've been able to convert a lot of, actually all the pasture had been fallow. I've been fallow for almost 30 years since Dad quit doing the cattle. And so having those sheep and gradually seeing, overgrown, brushy areas like really overcome with a lot of invasive species and whatnot, being restored, and it's starting to look like what I remember it looking like as a little kid. And so that's super satisfying, because I'm getting it closer to, again, what that land kind of naturally is adapted to be with the right kind of animal impact.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, balance, right? It's all about balance. And I feel like symbiosis is a catchword for me, but you can't have one without the other sometimes. So, yeah, thank you. Ajit?
I think the one thing that I'm most continually uplifted by is traveling and teaching and seeing what other people are doing. By the way, I am in the middle of homestead, so I'm just going to put that out there. I sold my home 7 years ago, and I have been traveling, and I lived up in Maine, and I've learned so much from people who've homesteaded, and I think my biggest achievement has been to be able to interact and drop in to homesteads and people's homes and farms and really soak up as much as I can. I lived in a yurt, off the grid. I've lived with Amish. I've done natural building. Like I said, I went to Tanzania and, was side by side with these African women that have not lost the technique of throwing mud. And they were laughing like, oh, haha, when my husband's finished his beer bottle, I'm gonna just stick it in the wall. And I was like, that's right. And just like dancing and mudding and just meeting people and learning. I'm gonna say it was a huge accomplishment, and that was a surprise, because I didn't think that leaving would get me so much information, because so many people, and I really admire them, stay on the land, like Kerry, who's or this lovely gentleman who's like saving that stone home. And And believe me, I think if I had a stone home to save, I would also. And yet, I'm a cultural explorer, and I want to see how the different ways and the different, I want another viewpoint, right? And also, I've seen when things fail. And like the most famous cob builder, I don't know if you know him, his name's Yanto Evans. And I lived with him and took care of him in the woods. He was 80, his wife left him, and she hired me. She's like, "You won't leave the woods." And I was like, "Okay, I'll go live with him. I'll make him breakfast, and he can, he's at the end of his life, but he's in his 80s, and we had tea and many discussions, and he showed me how to use a machete, and he scolded me for having a walking stick, and not pulling a branch off. And I was like, okay. And he taught me how to harvest reishi mushrooms, in Oregon, and he would knock them. He would go, "Good morning, darling. Don't take that one," okay. And then the last day, I had this desire to go into a bog, and he was like, go ahead. And so I walked through this bog, and I lifted up the mulch, and there was the mother lode of reishi. And I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. And I said, "Can I?" And he goes, "Take it all." I was like, oh my God. And so he showed me how to chop it, how to boil it, how to serve it. And so I guess that is my accomplishment, is just to, and then I left, in the middle of a blizzard in January. I was like, well, I gotta go, and so I ended that. And so I think part of it has been to drop in, learn, and now, I think I'm at a settling point. So I'm scoping. I got my ears on.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Now we're into your questions that some of you guys submitted for us. So this one makes me laugh. For those of us over 50, learning as we go. There's only one of you over 50, right? Okay.
Right.
What does it practically mean for a homestead to become more productive and more resilient while becoming less physically demanding over time? I know the two of you, I know all of you can speak to that, because I think the biggest thing we do is we burn ourselves out. Like, I am more fit than I've ever been in my life. I call it farm fit. My friend, I visited Colorado, my friend was like, "You want to come to the gym?" I was like, "Never in a million years." You need to walk back into a gym. So you can keep that. Thank you. If you have yoga, I'll take the yoga. But I feel that. I feel it slowly kind of beating me up a little bit more each year, right? Does everybody kind of feel that? So, good question. Thank you.
I'll answer first. So there's a lot of permaculture purists out there that say if you don't build it with a shovel, it's not permaculture. That's a bunch of horse dookie. So diesel, big machines, excavators, skid steers. I'm not afraid to use any of them. Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. If you need to put a swale in, absolutely. I mean, if it's a little swale, sure, use a shovel. But we built a 0.2 acre Google garden at our school. And I'm not afraid to admit, we used skid steers and we used excavators. We placed a lot of the manure by hand, because you have to. You got to get your hands dirty with the land manure. But there was no way we were ever going to build that by hand. I mean, I'd still be building it right now if we hadn't used machines. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to get a skilled operator out. And also, don't be afraid to have an expert. When your electrical is going to burn your house down, you call an electrician, right? When you have design problems with your farm and you want it to be more regenerative, you hire somebody who's skilled in regenerative design to come out there. Skilled people cost money. I fear the guy who's charging you $10 an hour and is going to tell you how he can make your farm better. Because if he can really do that, he's going to charge you a lot more than that. But don't be afraid to, give it your all. But again, you got to take the time too. If you just got on your property, the observe and interact is huge, because they say don't make any major changes for a year, because you want to see all 4 of those seasons on your property. But once that happens and you've made your notes, bring some people in and get her done. Because none of us are getting any younger.
Yeah.
I felt like a year wasn't enough. I'm learning things now, 3 years in, watching the land, that I'm thinking, oh, we're looking at our pond today and talking about when we built our giant road that goes all the way up the property, we had them dig a little pond out for water catchment because we looked at the whole map of the whole property and how much water was coming down, and I knew, even without knowing Tennessee yet, that we were gonna have a major water event, and that water had no place to go except for the middle of our road. How many people have redone their road in this room, right? Like almost every year, some people. And so that pond doesn't hold water. And we had this huge discussion about, well, should I line the pond with the vision that we have of like ducks and wildlife and all the beautiful things in this pond, or do we leave the pond as is? Because currently it's doing a really good job of diverting water when we get a lot of it at once. So it's like little things like that that now, 3 years in, changed my decision making. So
I would ask the question too, who here does get burned out? Like who here gets tired or, needs, okay, all right, so that is, tired right now.
it's Monday, right?
I was thinking of so when you've got a good water catchment system, right? And you wouldn't like just, I don't know, put a tarp and hope that all the rainwater would just fall on that tarp and then you could just pick up the tarp and, no. You create a container, a system. Well, it's the same thing that happens in your body. We think we can just go and go and go and go and go, and that all the systems, the adrenal glands and the heart and all your muscles and the vagus nerve, it's all just gonna pop right into place, and that doesn't happen. And so part of what we do, and part of what I do, and part of regenerative design is, before I get out, I have a whole, just a routine that I go, how's my breath? How's my muscles today? Did I recuperate my back today? Did I lay down and put my legs up on a chair? Did I do some of this? Did I do some of that? And I look at my internal systems and I see, are they depleted or are they, revitalized? And so this machine has got to be kept up, and I'm 68, right? And my grandmother, I do have longevity in my family. My grandmother's 101. She passed. My dad's 94, still a fireman, still driving, And he says to me, "You can't get any older because then I'm getting older." So that's what I say to that, is you have to, and again, that's one of my wheelhouses, is that we got to take care of the system in order to create the system. And that system is extremely important.
And it gets more important the older we get.
It's more important the older that you get. So, if you're not going to take 20 minutes on the back, what we call bookends on your day, then you're going to pay. That you just can't run that system down. You have to get active and get integrated in your body. Yeah.
And I think that what comes with that maybe is asking for help.
That's
when
right.
we get tired,
That's right.
And that's what this group I feel like is getting better and better at. The last time I saw some of you was at an herb rally that we did. Darla had way too many herbs and she couldn't harvest all of them, and we just showed up and took some herbs with us and dried a bunch of herbs together, and it was a beautiful day. And I think remembering to ask for help is one of the hardest things that we have to do.
So there's a concept, one of the design concepts in permaculture we call function stacking. Function. I don't know anything about fashion, I guarantee you. Function stacking is multiple things happening within one certain space, and often we're talking about a linear and a vertical space. So an example that I've got on my farm is the way I run our egg-laying hens and our meat rabbits. So I have 4 adult meat rabbits, 2 males, 2 females, and they get together and have a good time on occasion. And But when they're just like hanging out through the winter and I'm not breeding them, they are in cages inside of the chicken run, which is it's fit like a welded wire fence enclosed. I don't know, it's not super big. It's about 20 by 16 or so. I've got, anywhere from 6 to 8 hens in there and their rooster. And so they're all in one space. The rabbits are up high in their cages. They're not on the ground because you don't want to, there's some illness issues that can happen. So they're up on the ground. Chickens are on the bottom. And then I fork in at regular intervals wood chips, hay, straw, whatever, grass clippings, bag leaves, whatever carbon sources I can get a hold of. Go ahead and be thinking about where you can find carbon sources. I'll come back to that later. But big resource for your operation. So the chickens are on the ground and they're digging through that stuff. They're finding worms. They're eating bugs. They're mixing it all up. And they're basically making compost for me. And every now and then I get in there. And by every now and then I mean like once every couple of weeks for 15 minutes. I get in there with my fork and I just kind of take everything that they've been kicking around all over the place and I kind of pitch it just into a corner. And that becomes the compost pile that's going to continue to cook down. They still get in there and scratch, and so we kind of clean it up again from time to time. And I throw in more stuff onto the floor. Meanwhile, rabbits are up in their cages, and they're pooping all the time. And apparently chickens like that, and they will consume rabbit poop. It's just herbivore poop. It's not gross. It's just little pellets. But they're also mixing it up. And same thing when I clean out the rabbit cages, which they usually have some form of hay or straw in there to line the bottom. Pull that out, throw that down, same thing, circle of life. So all that's happening within one space that is also a 5-second walk from my front porch. So that is easy for me to manage. It's easy for my wife to manage when I'm away because she has some mobility problems. And it's just very, it's very kind of tight and compact. Another thing I like to think about, almost all of us were on hills. If anybody around here has flat land, where did you find that? So I try to keep any finished material for like compost, for instance, or any kind of material that needs to be moved. I try to store it as high in the landscape as is practical. So like when I get a wood chip drop, I've got a spot at basically the highest point of my portion of the property. And anywhere those wood chips are moving, at the minimum, they're going downhill. Because a lot of my work still happens with a wheelbarrow. We've got some smaller equipment now and, a four-wheeler when I can get the dang thing to start. But most of my material moving is still with a pitchfork and a wheelbarrow. So I just use, I use gravity to my benefit as much as possible. And then lastly, I ask myself, do I really need to be doing this? Like, is this a job an animal can do? Which is, in the case of grazers, so I don't bush hog anymore, but I do move sheep around. Does it have to be done this way? Like, am I locked into a pattern of thinking that is actually false? Mm-hmm. And so, and one example of that I have run into multiple times when I visit people for a consult is they have it in their head that the garden can't be close to the house. Yes, it can. If you want to fall off of your front porch into your garden, I think you ought to be able to do that. And I'm assuming probably nobody in here is really dealing with like an HOA. Probably not really ever. So you can grow food in your front yard if you get enough sunlight and you have a way to get water to it. So sometimes there's just a little bit of where the conventional thinking might actually be making things unintentionally harder.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for that, everybody. Yeah. That definitely helps me think about what we were talking about with the goats and the cane fruit and the clearing out where we want to put our next row of trees and just bringing the goats down there. The next question submitted was, and I'm going to change this up a little bit. In East Tennessee's clay soils, we all have them, right? Red, yeah. Humidity, we all have that. Weed pressure and shifting microclimates, which regenerative principles matter most, and what mistakes do newcomers commonly make? And instead of newcomers, I'm just going to ask you what your biggest mistake might have been, or a lesson that you had to learn the hard way. Ben.
I'd love to start with that, yeah. So you guys remember COVID, right? Yeah, sure. So my garden was not big enough, or so I thought, and I needed to expand that garden. And And I did. And I grew about 4 times the size it originally was because, there was food shortages and, I needed to make sure that my kids could eat whatever I grew. So I ended up hurting myself because I was just overdoing it. And, I was using my right arm I'm right-handed, so I was using my right arm a lot. And I overdid it. And then all of a sudden I had to use my left. Well, guess what? If you keep using your left all the time, guess what? Now you got 2 gimpy arms. And then what do you do, right? So I expanded way too much. And there was no way I was able to plant everything. I was able to get most of it irrigated. And I was able to get, quite a bit from it. But maintaining, a half-acre garden when neither of your arms work is not fun. So really trying to do too much, too fast. And I would say probably with that too is starting projects that sound like a great idea because you saw it on YouTube, and then not listening to your wife. That's the other one. But she won't help me finish any of those projects, so it's kind of on her too. So, yeah. But that would be the big thing is just going way too big. No, that's not good, especially beginners or you don't need to plant 30 different kinds of vegetables. You really don't. I mean, you can plant 5 and get really good at. You can plant 1 and get really good at tomatoes. Get really good at peppers. You don't have to grow so much. And now that I'm working in production, I have interns, and it's like on daily, I'm like, why did we plant so much? Why did we start so much stuff? And we don't have a market. We do in the sense that everything that we grow, we can give to a food pantry. We work with multiple food pantries. So, but again, like we want to turn a profit. Right. So, it'd be nice if I actually had a market to buy all this arugula or bok choy or any of the various things that we're growing.
I ditto that, and also composting. What Kerry was saying about stacking functions. The nicest way to compost, I've got a compost pile, and you could throw your compost right into the garden, which I do oftentimes. Somebody talked to us beforehand about the hay, and in the garden. Part of the mistake I made was digging and digging. You don't need to dig so much, and you don't need to plant so much. And you can also get starts. I know a lot of people love seeds, and seeds are wonderful, but also people who grow starts, again, they love to do that. Buy their starts, and then in Costa Rica, we had big screens, wooden, old windows, wooden screens, and we had 3 or 4 of us, and they had really pretty compost, round, netted compost piles, about 3 or 4 of them, and all different stages, and just taking a pile, and we would, scratch through the screen and get that really nice dirt, and over 2 hours, playing music and laughing and talking, we had buckets of really soft, beautiful dirt. So part of the stacking functions too is to figure out, again, don't do it yourself, or if you are going to do it yourself, do less. And then if you do want to do something that's a little bit more, what's the word here? Larger, then have a party. And many hands. Have a perma-blitz. So many hands make the work, and when your compost is ready to be screened down, get it done. So that's.
One of the, don't disturb the leaping soil. I know, because I remember how my great-grandparents' garden, they got the plow out, they flipped the soil over and everything. But, yes, weed pressure. We mentioned weed pressure. Anytime you disturb that soil, you pull up so many seeds that are hanging out in the seed bank of the soil. You have just awakened them. So I am a really big advocate of using, again, carbon materials, layering forms of carbon. Wood chips are probably the best, probably my favorite, and generally pretty easy to get a hold of. Find ways to get wood chips. delivered to your house. If we can't cover that, you guys come to me after this, and I'll tell you all the tricks I got to sleep on that. And you apply those wood chips basically fall through wintertime. You can do it anytime, but if you want to plant in the spring, you need to give them some time to break down. And a fancy word we use is biomass, but that's just a fancy way of saying things that were living that are now decaying and returning to the soil. When you pile those wood chips on top of your soil, you are essentially creating a planting bed. And after a few months, and we're talking thick here, several inches, not just a little scattering. After several months, that soil biology has really awakened, and the earthworms have come out, the nematodes, all these different critters that live in the soil have assisted in that decay, the fungal networks and everything. You knock off the top few inches of what basically still looks like wood chip, and you're going to find what looks like the forest floor. And you scratch that aside, and you drop your seed or your plant in there, and you keep going. And it sounds too good to be true, but I'm telling you guys, you don't have to plow your garden, or just try it in a certain area. Even if you want to do the whole thing. I know a lot of people like to do like a big, 40 by 100 plot or something like that, and I get it. But it makes a world of difference, and you pretty much, I don't want to say you have no weed, but your weed pressure, 75% less.
Yeah.
At least.
That's, I think, one of the biggest lessons I've learned from permaculture. I mean, one, the weeds are there doing a job. Like, I think that's the biggest thing that I learned early on was the weeds are telling you something too. The weeds are telling you your soil is depleted, and they're actually trying to restore the soil, right? So they have a beautiful place in the ecosystem. Don't hate your weeds. Compost them.
Yeah.
And compost them before they go to seed. And then don't dig up their little friends underneath, and you'll be good. Yeah. In the interest of time, are we supposed to be done at 8?
Give or take.
Give or take, okay. I thought maybe I'll just open it up for the last couple of questions for the panel in case anybody's just burning with a question. I do have a couple more in here, but yeah.
I have a question. You mentioned, Ben, about comfrey. I recently found out about putting comfrey underneath the fruit trees. I wish I would have known that years ago when I planted my trees. Anyway, where do you plant the comfrey? Is it within the drip line of the tree or near the trunk, or between the drip line and the trunk?
You plant it where you never want it, you would never plant it anywhere near annuals. You could plant it under the drip line, it does need a fair bit of sun. So are you talking about a pre-established tree that you're planting?
I already have pre-established fruit trees. I just need to figure out.
Yeah, so
how
it's
to
gonna
make
want
it
some
better.
sun. So, I mean, I would definitely put.
Edges.
Yeah.
On the
around
edges,
the-
on the drip line of the
Yeah.
tree.
Mhm.
Are there other things that you can plant under the tree besides comfrey? to help the
Absolutely,
tree?
and what I would do is I would Google whatever tree it is, and then like support guild.
The guild.
Yeah, the guild, and that's a guild is just, a support guild would be a bunch of plants that work really well together. But just like we're a guild of people, we work really well together as well, so.
Yeah, it's community. You're making we did that for every tree that we planted. We didn't only plant comfrey. We put in bee balm. Sometimes we had rhubarb for some reason, so we throw in rhubarb in there.
Yeah.
Coltsfoot.
Yeah.
Oregano?
Any of your
Any
Mediterranean
herbs?
herbs.
Yeah.
The light underneath, because oregano will spread too.
But I agree with Ben, search, because
Yeah.
each tree has a little bit of a different
Yeah,
preference.
and
right?
somebody's already done the research.
Yeah.
And it's just easier to go based off of what somebody else has done.
Yeah.
Sometimes though, it's hard to find specific to the area, because something might work great in Oregon, Pacific Northwest,
Right.
and may not translate here.
Right, zone 7.
Yeah.
Yes.
I always also put in
Yeah,
zone
that's
7
a
when
good
I'm
one.
Googling something. I mean, that's only the master gardener and me talking, but I think it helps.
We have a lot of
mountain-
diseases here too,
Yeah.
that they don't have other places, so.
Yeah.
It makes it tougher.
Yeah, I mean, Florida's even worse, but yeah. And, that'll also help with the pests. It can help deter, you can put some plants in there that deter, like you could put horseradish in there. You can put other things that'll deter the pests away, you know.
Walking onions are one of my favorites.
Yeah.
They're perennial. They seem to drive off a lot of moles and voles and things that make.
Did you hear that? Everybody's walking onions?
Walking onions, yeah.
Okay.
Do you have to plant it under a tree?
No.
Because I know on a prairie, and
No, I like sun. Country loves sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can chop and drop it. So comfrey has 3 seasons here. In Colorado, I could get 2 out of it. So I chop and drop it like, I don't know, when do you guys first chop it here? I chopped it in June in Colorado.
Yeah,
It's about May here, right? And then you can chop again, and by chop and drop, it's just a permaculture practice. You take it right down to the root, or right down to the, nub, to the ground, and days later, you're seeing giant leaves being grown. So it's a very prolific plant, for sure.
I grow it in containers as well.
That's a good idea.
Big fabric pots, I'll grow it in there, and because it is such a pain in the butt to propagate it by getting it out of the ground, because it doesn't want to come out of the ground. So when I do it in fabric pots, the roots are all there, and I'm able to go in there and propagate it super easy.
Yeah. And there are 2 or 3 different kinds. There's a wild comfrey, and then there's the pink, purple flower.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've grown both, in Colorado I can grow both the purple flower and the white flower, and I think they perform just the same herbally, but.
There was a fellow, did you have a question in a second? Yeah.
Comfrey, is it invasive? That's one of the fears that I have.
So don't put it in an annual bed.
yes.
Yeah.
Don't put it in an annual bed. But anybody who tells you it's this horribly invasive plant,
It's not.
it's not.
Not.
Yeah,
There's a certain kind that's not.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, so when you do Bocking 14, it's sterile. The seeds are not fertile. So the only way it can propagate is through the rhizome. So, yeah, it's gonna spread, but just don't put it in an annual bed. Don't build nice raised beds and put comfrey in there. It doesn't belong there.
We dug out a 5-foot comfrey, and the roots were like this, but we got it out by the root, and they're all medicinal.
Yeah.
And then you could soak it in oil, and you'll never
Sell.
need bed gay again.
So that's awesome. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, how do you manage your pasture? Do you rotationally graze? Do you have only sheep in it, or?
Yeah, so we have close to 60 sheep right now and 1 guardian donkey. Nearly all of the original perimeter barbed wire fence is long gone, so these sheep are trained to 3-strand nylon polywire and step-in posts. So I just have, I don't even know, maybe a couple hundred step-in posts and several thousand feet of polywire at this point. And then, yeah, I just set up paddocks. They're on a rotation. I aim to not return them to any paddock within 18 days, and in most cases, it's actually more like 4 to 5 weeks before we're back, before we kind of like made a full circuit of the property.
How many acres altogether?
I'd say there's about, because I graze multiple parcels, so it's probably about 12 to 15 acres that are actually can be grazed, and I also push them into areas that are brushy that most people would consider pasture. So I'm also using them to clear understory from things like bush honeysuckle privet, honeysuckle vine, things of that nature.
So on a given cycle, how much area is in a paddock for 60 sheep?
The answer is it depends on the time of year, so there's a lot of factors. But in general, so when things are growing really fast, so when we get here about to April, the grass and all the weeds are really gonna really kick off. We're gonna see all that really flush growth. We're seeing a lot of it a little early this time of year around. So, what I aim to do, for one thing, the flock will be actually reduced to about 35 to 40. So a lot of the young ones will get sold off. My main group, I will fence, let's say about a ½ acre, and then I section it off, usually into about 3 or 4 sections, and I move them every couple of days. So there's a lot of different ways to graze rotationally, and it's kind of a generic term. I'm trying to get them into a situation where those animals are competing with each other for the best forage, and I'm pulling them off and moving them before they can overgraze or back graze, which is when they go back and they take a second bite off of a plant within the same grazing rotation, which can really stunt the growth and the root systems of that plant. So there is a, like I said, it really depends. And my pastures are not all equal. Some pastures do way better than others. Some are really delayed, some are really heavy in fescue, which is yet to really come out of dormancy here. Some are doing really well because I've been able to spend more time feeding them compost and feeding them biomass and getting the soil structure a lot healthier. I don't really seed. The only seed the pastures get is by rolling out hay. So most of the hay they feed on in the wintertime. I actually unravel the bale through, I kind of zigzag it through the pasture, and what they don't eat gets worked back into the soil. Yeah, I can't really give a hard and fast answer. I do a grazing class, so not to advertise too much, but I do kind of a sheep 101 grazing class on the farm in Knox County. So Strong Roots Resources is the website if anybody wants to look at the class.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think,
Okay, you're fine, just
because I ready to go for it.
I was gonna ask about your, you do design, you do permaculture design, that includes like water. Anyway, yes, can you explain that a little bit?
Explain about water movement on the land?
Yes.
Okay, so this is one of the first things we look at. So when I get onto a property, one of the first things I want to know, aside from the actual like goals of my customer, is how the energies move across the land. So energies are wind, water, sun. I'm even counting like people and vehicle traffic because that stuff can be, it's part of it. So yeah, and a big one is water. So I don't care how big or how small your property is, water moves across it one way or another. So we look at how it comes off buildings, we look at contour lines, we look at where there's any obvious erosion issues or erosion issues that could kick off if there are any earthworks planned. We look at it from the aspect of what's going on with the roof buildings that are already there. Are there buildings planned? That's going to change water movement. We look at topo maps. We can put contour lines on a map and see. Do you understand what contour lines are? Okay. That way we know, like, if we need to do earthworks, where does it make sense to do them and what type? Yeah, water is, that's one of the biggest. And even in our area where, we're a pretty wet climate. We average about 60 inches a year rainfall. Even a little bit more, like the more we actually get up in elevation in the mountains. But we can still get very, very dry. So we have to plan for that. But nowadays, apparently we also have to plan for 12 inches of rain to fall in 24 hours time or something crazy like that. So yeah, it's had me like really expanding. Like I'm not hedging anymore. I'm like, and one of the things about permaculture is that we are trying to design and plan for the worst possible weather event. So.
Yeah, I can second that. That's something that you do in a design certificate class. It's like, we took all of Shambhala, the top of our property is at 1,800 feet, and the top of the mountain above us is 1,900 feet. And that water's coming right at us because we're downhill from it. And so you take the whole square area, square footage, and multiply it by whatever the worst could be, which Helene was 8 inches on our property. So I took 8, it was before Helene, but I think I did take 8 inches because I think it was double the average.
Yeah.
So the average is 4. And it was like 2 million gallons of water, and that's why we dug the pump.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the first things that's really good to look at, because that's another way to answer one of the questions in here, to save energy. You don't need to be, you can roll your wood chips downhill, and you don't need to move water. You can't, it's gonna move itself, but it always finds a way. And so if you can let it do its thing and build around where it's already going to go, then you're gonna be watering your garden a lot less. Terraces are a great, Devin's property is an amazing example of that. They built terraces into the slope, and the water just flows down the terraces. It's a perfect example of a swale system in permaculture design.
If I can just add real quick onto that, if you guys are thinking about water on your property, we have 3 goals with water management. we slow it down, we sink it into the ground, and we spread it over a wider area. That's like our core, just if nothing else, just think about those three things and try to keep your soil covered. Don't have bare soil. If I could like evangelize any little bit, that's my thing right there. So yeah, slow it, sink it, spread it over a wider area. If more people could design properties, and if municipalities would design properties and developments in that manner, what happened in Appalachia might not have been as bad. Still would have been bad, but it wouldn't have been as bad.
Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.